So Black Widow has finally debuted in theaters and on Disney Plus Premium, so it's time to talk spoilers. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your spoiler-filled thoughts on Black Widow. If you haven't seen the movie, you have been warned. This is a spoiler review. No need for warnings down below in the comment section. If you're new to my spoiler reviews, the way that they work is they're intentionally a little bit more relaxed. Me kind of just sharing my thoughts, kind of walking through the movie. I'll kick off with my general thoughts with spoilers in there, and then I'll kind of walk through the course of the movie. There will be chapter markers down below if you want to skip ahead to hear what I thought about a specific thing inside the movie. And let's get started. So to give my general thoughts on the movie at this moment in time, when I did my spoiler-free review, I'd watched the movie one time, then I watched it a second time at home to write lots of notes for the spoiler review, and then I watched it a third time last night in a theater. And what am I thinking about the movie right now? I pretty much stand by everything that I said in my spoiler-free review. I thought it was a very solid, enjoyable MCU spy film with some nice mature themes in it. It's a little bit more grown up, a little bit more complexity to the nature of the story. David Harbour and Yelena are the two standouts in the film. They're so much fun. And at the same time, it's just really weird that they would put this movie out as the kickoff of Phase 4, that they would put this movie out not in Phase 3. It's just a very anticlimactic kickoff to something new, because it's not really something new. This distinctly feels like it belongs, like it came out 5 years ago, as it picks up right after the events of Captain America Civil War without any set of context to that. And, we're bringing someone back from the dead. So it's just a very weird time to choose to do this movie. If you can set that aside, as much as you can set that aside, the handheld fights or hand-to-hand choreography, all very cool. Has a nice brutality to it where literally people are being smashed into door frames and stuff like that. When I watched it in the theater last night, the lady next to me, I guess, is a very vocal reactor to what she's seeing. She literally kept screaming out the F word whenever someone's head would hit a wall or something like that. Kind of added an extra little vibe to the movie as I was watching it. So all that stuff I liked. The humor has worked for me every single time I've watched the film, in all three contexts. And so in general, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. I just don't know why they released it when they did, and as the kickoff to Phase 4. Other thought, having now seen it 3 times, I stand by something I've actually been saying for several years, is that I think that this movie would have been a great Disney Plus show, where you could spread this story out over 5 episodes, and you have a full episode of them as the family together back in the 80s. It'd probably be expensive for the de-aging, but it was a TV show. They would have found some way to do that, so adjust it a little bit, spend more time with each of the different aspects of this. Because that's another thing people have been saying about it is man, I've been getting used to these 5 hours. It felt like I didn't know the characters enough by the time the credits rolled. You do it as a series with 5-6 episodes, and you have a whole episode dedicated to each of the aspects, sections of this. A full episode of them at the house later in the movie. And I think another thing that I didn't mention this in my review, but I'm not crazy about the amount of spectacle in the third act, because I don't think it really fits the movie. And it felt like they needed to justify the MCU budget. And so suddenly then we're doing big gigantic spectacle and falling from the sky. I'll talk about all that later on. But you didn't need that. And so on a TV show budget, it probably would be a little bit more personal with the way that they would do the finale without needing to have people falling from the sky. And I think that would have been very cool. I've been saying for years, Black Widow is the perfect candidate for an MCU TV show because she has the star power to bring people in, but the nature of the character doesn't require the spectacle of a blockbuster budget. And so, I think there's enough material in here with the story and of course the backstory. And there's so many different characters that you could just spend a lot of time with each of them. And I'm guessing Scarlett Johansson wanted to have her blockbuster before her send off. They felt she's earned it, and that makes a lot of sense. Just their timing to do that is very weird. But 3 times in watching this movie, I think it very much solidified all my feelings that I said before of like, yeah, like I really enjoyed this movie. There's a lot of entertainment. I like the deeper themes. The humor landed for me. The action was very cool. The timing, equally very weird to do a movie like this. With that said, I'm going to get started and do a walkthrough and literally just kind of walk through, give my quick thoughts on each of the segments of the film. So the movie kicks off in 1995 Ohio, and we're basically watching two cute little girls doing cute little girl stuff, playing, having fun, riding bikes, doing back bends that make them seem, I don't know, as an old man, I just see that and I go, oh, that looks painful to do that. And it kicks off just as an image of the family, and then you quickly discover that, in fact, they are spies. Now, the first time I watched this movie, I was at home with kind of the screener app that Disney uses, and for whatever reason, I don't know if they rendered my copy of it wrong, but it was only at like 480. It wasn't in high definition, and whenever you do these screen apps at home, they put your name across the middle of the screen, and so at the beginning, it says 1995. The first time I watched it, I thought it said 1985, and which I was very confused as like, wait, this doesn't even make sense. Scarlett Johansson was born in 1984. Florence Pugh was born many years after 1985. Where are they? Why does this sit so far back in the past? Then I watched it a second time. I was like, oh, I just couldn't read the screen. Probably not the best way to experience a film. But so I thought it was set in 1985 the first time I watched it. I was like, this math doesn't add up quite at all. So when it says 21 years later, I thought that next segment was in 2006. I was very confused the first time I watched the film. I had to like refresh my mind. Like, wait, okay, I got my years wrong on there. Anyway, but you just kind of see them as a family at home, and you can tell that they actually like each other and having fun. David Harbour comes home. He's distraught and at the same time seems to have a certain excitement to him, says something's up. And some of these things, when you're trying to piece together what exactly is going on, you're just trying to follow the plot. So the first time I watched it, I was just kind of following the plot of what was happening, which was, okay, they're spies. They've been caught. They've got whatever's happening. It's going down now. They've got to run. But when you watch it a second and third time, you just pick up on each of their reactions to this. Yelena has no idea what's going on. She just thinks she's an American. And lines later in the movie make it clear that's the case. She's legitimately just a little girl. She was 3 years old when she was put in Ohio. So all she knows is that she's an American little kid. Natasha is old enough to remember when they were planted there. And so she finally has a life that she enjoys and loves her life here in Ohio. And you can kind of see the dread on her face of like, oh no, I'm about to lose this life that I actually love. I actually like this. And some of that's even interesting as you kind of watch her reflection all throughout the rest of the movie. Her reaction to the other people when she's saying things like, it was all fake, it was all fake, it was all fake, is because of so much of the betrayal that she felt. She loved her life in Ohio. That's the life that she actually wanted for herself, but it was taken from her, and therefore she feels somewhat betrayed by it in a certain sense, which is kind of interesting little dynamics of the how that plays out. And then you see the face on Melina, and she also is like disappointed because she's been raising these girls and cares about them, and she knows what's about to happen to them. And later in the movie, she says, I was cycled through the Red Room 3 times before you were even born, Natasha. And you think, she knows what's about to happen to these girls and she regrets it, but she won't do anything about it. And then Red Guardian Alexei, he's the man of action. He's the man of mission. He's the true believer. He believes in their cause and what they're doing and everything like that. So he's excited to not do undercover work to get back to doing his thing. So he's excited about all this. Like when you watch it on the second time, you just notice these little details, or like Natasha's trying to grab this photo album and Melinda goes, don't go around, just go to the car. And later in the movie, you realize that Melinda grabbed it. It calls back to it. She goes, why did you take this? And that was actually, she told Natasha, don't grab that. There's no time for that. And you almost wonder if it was like, she's telling Natasha, don't grab that because it'll be painful if you have that and you're remembering something. But as a grown-up, she took it because she wanted to remember it, could maybe process it a little bit better and everything like that. There's a lot of little details in there that you catch on the second viewing. So they start running from the police, end up at an airfield to take off. And then it has kind of the little reveal that Alexei, the father here, has superpowers. He just runs up to this thing and throws it in the air. And it's so cartoonishly over the top because it just kind of happens that you get a laugh out of you because you're like, what? just throws it up. And it's kind of like, it very much feels cartoonish, but it's meant to reveal oh, he's like a super soldier. Okay, gotcha. And so then he's able to do these superhero type things, battling cops and jumping over things, riding on the wing of a plane and stuff like that. That's totally ridiculous if he's not someone strong enough to throw a thing through the air. They fly off. So this whole beginning part reminded me of this TV show called The Americans. I've only seen the first two seasons of it, but I haven't seen all of it. But it's like a show about this family decades in the past, Russians posing as Americans. And it's very much the show's about one of these types of families. So it reminds you of that kind of vibe. Like, this is where I say, like, if it was a TV show, seeing a whole episode with them in the past and him stealing the files and exactly what was happening, like really falling in love with this family. Yeah, I can imagine a version of it that's an even better version of this story that I already enjoyed. Just having enough time in it to care about the dynamics, but also see how radically different each of them are handling it and how the children would perceive of the parents differently. There's a lot of interesting dynamics here. So they fly off to Cuba, and Alexei is just so happy to be off, being able to do mission stuff, not undercover work. And he's just joking around. Dreykov, Melena's been shot and she's taken off, and you don't see what happens to her. I assume, like many of you, that I thought she might be Taskmaster. That was going into the movie. I thought she might be Taskmaster. That was just my assumption before, like literally from the trailers. Like, I wonder if it's going to be her that's Taskmaster. And then she gets shot and she's taken away, and you don't know what happens to her. And it's like, okay, did she get rebuilt into Taskmaster? So even the movie, as it plays out, started kind of affirming, I bet she's Taskmaster. I bet that's where this goes. She's going to be Taskmaster. That's not what ends up happening. And then you have the little girls who do not want whatever's about to happen to them. And you even have Natasha being so protective of Elena, grabbing a gun and fighting them. And then Alexei, the father, like talks them down, takes the gun, like, hey, you're doing your mission. We did a great job. Like, you're important. Look at, and as he's talking, trying to be this father, my girls are strongest girls in the world. Grown men walk up, inject needles in their necks, put them to sleep, and they're taken off. And you start to realize just like how horrific that is. Like you start realizing the grossness of one of the elements of the plot of this movie. And that's why I talk about this movie being more mature, darker. Children being taken by grown men, and most of them being killed off if they're not good enough, and then being just completely controlled, brainwashed, rewired to be killers. It's like a very gross plot. And to where it's a movie that, as you get into the end of it, there's not a specific, like, Dreykov isn't trying to, like, blow up a city or blow up the world. There's not, like, a thing we're trying to stop by a deadline. There's no ticking clock. But you still care about it. You still want it to happen. In a sense, it's almost a revenge story of sorts, but it's also a liberation story of these people that were freed from this horrific life of being a slave assassin. And they're going to go free the other slave assassins and get revenge on this guy that took away their childhood. And that's where they found a new angle for a plot line. And right at the beginning, you see these innocent little girls, one riding bike, gymnastics, love their life in Ohio, and then kidnapped and taken away to be turned into these assassin monsters. And you immediately go, oh, I want some of those people to pay. Oh, that's so messed up. Like what this guy is doing, this mastermind is doing. Then it leads to easily the creepiest intro sequence in any MCU movie, with Smells Like Teen Spirit playing, except it's this new version that's designed to be like horrifying, as you're seeing these images of little girls being selected, and they're like clutching teddy bears and stuff in container units and being trained to be killers. And starts showing images of the villain with Bill Clinton and all these other political leaders as he's like woven his web throughout the world to try and control everything that's happening. And it just, in a certain way, fleshes out the world. In the United States, you had Hydra doing this stuff. And then from Russia, you've got this guy. That's how he's intertwining his fingers throughout the entire world. And it just like does a bunch of world building while painting this horrifying image and establishing why this guy has to be taken down and making it very personal. Like, this guy is sick. I can't wait to see him defeated. So this brings us 21 years in the future to 2016, not 2006. We are right after the events of Captain America Civil War. And the next 20 minutes of the movie basically kind of maneuver the characters around, set up the plot points that kicks everything in motion. Everything up to this point in time is the prologue to let us know about the family. This is really where our plot begins. So it kicks off with Black Widow on a phone call with Thunderbolt Ross. He's tracking her down, trying to capture her. It was fascinating to me is that the audacity or the boldness of the MCU, this movie does not do one thing to establish what's going on here. It just assumes that you remember what year Captain America Civil War came out. It assumes from the outside of this that you remember that movie, what happened, why she's on the run. It doesn't do one bit to explain that. So I sure hope you either know your MCU or rewatched Captain America Civil War right before watching this, because it just starts and she's on the run. And just every single bit of it is assumed. It assumes you know who Thunderbolt Ross is. It assumes you remember that she was actually on Ross's side, but then at the end of the battle, she decides to let Cap and his people go because you're not going to stop. All right, well, so then she pauses to slow down Black Panther so that they can escape and do their thing. She kind of did both sides in Civil War. It just assumes that you remember that happened. All of that, those details. So it kicks off and they're on a phone call. She's kind of bantering back and forth with him. And then basically turns out she's in a different location, head somewhere off. I was a little disappointed Thunderbolt wasn't more involved in the story. I was kind of hoping we'd get we would get an actual flashback to 2006 or something when she's recruited over and maybe see a younger version of him, kind of what was going on when she was recruited. From the look of Thunderbolt Ross in this movie, in the trailers, he looked kind of de-aged. It looked like they're trying to do something. And I don't know, his look looked more fabricated than I'd expect. I don't know, maybe that's a way to phrase it. I don't know if the actor just looks real or really, really bad or what. But the look of him just seemed, especially from the trailers, I thought he looked de-aged. And then in the movie, it looked like they were doing more to with his eyebrows and hair to make it look like something. So I don't know if he lost a bunch of hair since then or what. But there's a fabrication to his look. So anyway, he's only kind of used as these bookends to the main storyline of as our slight reminder of oh yeah, Captain America Civil War, she's on the run. It's a little, oh yeah, that's going on. And then at the end of the movie, oh yeah, he's still following her. I wish there's a little bit more to it. So anyway, she escapes, throws her phone out, and it establishes she's all on her own. Theme of the movie, her realizing she's not all on her own and has never really been on her own. She has had families. But the beginning of the movie, she's by herself on a boat, throws her phone away, has almost no one to call. So the movie cuts to show us the widows in action, and we see Yelena as a Black Widow tracking someone down, and there's this lady running with something, and she's so desperate, she even gets hit by a car and stuff like that. She falls down, Yelena catches up with her, they have a knife fight, both of them are very talented, but Yelena is the better of the assassins and ends up stabbing the lady after outmaneuvering her, stabs her brutally in the chest. And as the lady's dying, she sprays this red stuff in her face, and Yelena pops out of it, and she's like, "Oh no, what have I done?" She kills this person. Clearly, there's a familiarity to it. She knows who the person is. So it's a bit of a confusing situation because we're not told until later on what exactly was going on here. So there's a bit of the way it plays out on first viewing. It's kind of what happened here? When was she brainwashed? What's going on here? Why does she know who this person is? You realize, later on you learn this is an older widow that got out of the program and found a way to undo the brainwashing that was taking place. And it's this red powder stuff. And so she gets the red powder stuff. She's now being tracked down by the other widows. But when you first watch it, it's not entirely clear exactly what's going on here. Back to Natasha. She's living in an RV in the middle of nowhere, and there's this contractor guy that feels comfortable enough to sleep in this trained assassin's bed. You walk in there, and this guy's just sleeping in her bed, and they start talking. Clearly, his perception is, we're friends, and she keeps I don't have friends. I hired you because I didn't, and she keeps trying to use language of business, and he keeps talking to her like, are you doing okay? Do you need something? I'm doing the best I can. Clearly, he feels a familiarity, a friendship with her, and she's being very cold towards him. It is very much in her mind needs to be alone and puts people in danger when she's not alone. And I love there's like this callback at the end of the movie where after all this banter at the end of it, and he's talking to Scarlett Johansson. So in the movie, she's Natasha. Either way, it's the same human being, one of the most beautiful people on the planet. And she says, you've been a really good friend to me. And like in the ultimate way, it affirms that the friendship that was there that he wanted at the beginning of the movie that she was denying. But in this other sense, as he says this, it's the ultimate example of Scarlett Johansson, Natasha Romanoff, this assassin person, distinctly places him in the friend zone. And he's like, that's what every man always wants to hear, which I know that's intended to be a commentary on how much she just placed him in the friend zone or not. But I thought it's just like the perfect line for what was happening in that little moment in time. Anyway, we're back at the beginning, but you kind of established the fact that she wants to be alone. She doesn't want friends. This guy's even trying to be a friend. And she gets some mail from her safe house in Budapest. I don't remember if I'm saying it the way he said it or she said it, but they seem to have a very distinct conversation about how you're supposed to say Budapest. I don't even understand how she said what she said and what letters were in there, but I'm sure it's the right pronunciation. But as someone that doesn't know the right one, Budapest, get some mail from there, and there's like a package that's like... So then that night... she runs out of power, juice, gasoline, or whatever, so she loads up to drive to get the gas station. Taskmaster shows up, and you get this pretty cool little sequence where she's driving, vehicle gets taken out, and then there's a person that has a shield and is throwing it and handling it like Captain America. And then as they start fighting, she's doing the hair whip things that this movie makes fun of so much, copying the poses and everything of Black Widow and just mirroring everything. And whatever Natasha does... very quickly, this opponent, Taskmaster, is able to outdo her. So there's a lot of pretty cool little stuff in the fight. And as someone that really likes more practical action and choreography and stuff like that, this movie has a lot of that cool stuff in it. And very quickly, you also realize, like, this movie has a brutality to it. Because when you see Black Widow get hit, like, she crunches over forward, flies backward. When she gets power kicked backwards, like, she flies out of the way. But in the sequence, pretty clear, whoever this person is, isn't actually interested in Black Widow. Is interested in the mail. So Black Widow pieces it together and is able to sneak off with whatever this other thing is. And inside of the package is a picture of the family. So she realized, oh, Yelena sent this to me. She's in Budapest. So this leads us to next segment of our movie, where the two of them reunite in Budapest. So Natasha shows up at the safe house, and of course, since it's one of her safe houses, she knows where the gun is, so she grabs the gun key, walks in, and before the doors even open, Yelena starts talking to her, and immediately, like, they have not spoken, and we don't even know. By the end of the movie, I'm still not even sure, like, how much did they even interact at the red, like, what did they interact with? I don't know, but it has been a very long, long time since the two of them have interacted, since she's been Black Widow, probably a decade now, or 8 years. Yelena doesn't know, or haven't interacted. They don't know what's up with the other person. And they're not sure if they can trust each other. And so it leads to them like pointing guns at each other. And so whenever the fight breaks out, each of them were trained in the same space. Each of them are top assassins. So whatever one does, the other one knows how to undo it. And they're both very brutal at this. Yelena being much more like, I'm trying to hurt you. Whereas Natasha isn't afraid of hurting, but she's not specifically trying to hurt her. And we get just... this is probably the most brutal neck snapping type fight, or actually not neck snapping because then you could walk and one of them would be dead, but just like actual visceral fights in all 14 films. Because you have these two people fighting and like she's smashing dishes on Natasha's head and getting bashed into door frames, smashed into walls, and it's meant to, it plays very much like you feel the hits to it. It doesn't play at all like just stylized action. Even though it is stylized, even though it is cool to look at, it's not played. It you know, sometimes Captain America jumps in the air and holds his shield and gets blown up by a missile or something, flies backwards, hits the wall, and keeps moving. When they hit a wall, you're like, ooh, I felt that. That's that type of fight scene. I loved that that's what they went with in this movie, and especially in like this sequence. And just even the imagery of this whole portion where they're in Budapest feels like it's pulled out of a Bourne movie. Both that fight in that room, the chases through some of the alleyways and stuff, all of that is reminiscent of the Bourne movies. Anyway, they fight and eventually get to the point in time where both of them are choking each other in the same way at the same time, and they call a truce. And you realize, like, they both know, at their heart, they know this person is not going to kill them, that they are trustworthy enough that we can pause to talk a little bit. But there's a lot of not sure exactly what's going on between them. And so they start talking, and you start to realize, like, the interesting dynamic of all the people she grew up with are now seeing her on TV, which is just an interesting thought of the Avengers are celebrities. Like they would naturally be all over television, and she's one of the people that would be on the TV. That's an interesting idea, especially because it's not that like a normal family that grew up in Ohio. It's literally like Russian assassins still have TVs and still would have heard about the alien invasion in New York and the robot holocaust in Sokovia. Like they would all hear about all of this. And so then her made up sister from decades ago would have learned like, oh, wow, my made up sister escaped being an assassin person and went on to be a celebrity superhero. That's just an interesting little concept the way it plays out. And you also start to realize, like, it puts these ideas out there of like, why didn't Natasha go back? Like, why didn't the movie needs a reason why she kept doing what she kept down the Avengers path, but never thought to go back to save people. And it kind of, the plot construction they come up with is that she thought that she ended the thing with her act to defect. She thought she destroyed the Red Room. Like, she did something that in her mind was horrible. She killed a little girl in order to kill the person that was leading the Red Room, and in doing so freed all these people, and the thing is over with. That's what she thought happened, and everyone kind of got out because of that. She did something horrible to free herself and free others, but that didn't actually happen. That's the whole thing kept going on and got worse and worse and worse as it was amplified with the mind control stuff that just got more and more prominent. It's just an interesting way that kind of plays out of like the things she never really thought about of like, okay, she's a hero now. Why wouldn't she use that hero status for the other people? And Yelena says that, like, why didn't I just kept checking the news? Like, Captain America brings down the Red Room, and she's legitimately confused. Like, I had an older sister in Ohio. She got out. She became a superhero that saves people for a living. Why didn't my sister come and save me? That's like, why is this dynamic? There's a tension while there's still a love, and there's conflicting feelings in this. Oh, because this sister that was just freed, the only sister, the only family Yelena has known is Natasha and these parents that aren't her real parents. And that sister didn't come and save her when she had, not just as a person could have done it, but also had a team of superheroes to do it. It's an interesting dynamic to it. And then even the dialogue in it of like, she mailed the stuff to Natasha. Like, why did you send it to me? What did you want me to do with it? She's like, well, you're the only superhero I know. Like, what? Who else would I send it to? Like, I want the superheroes to save the day. That's kind of what I've wanted ever since she got out. Like, I love just the implications of all of that and the meat that kind of goes into it. And this is the idea that's put out there that's the kind of the mystery or one of the emotional hooks of the film and mysteries at the same time. She's like, well, what about Dreykov's daughter? Because Natasha didn't mention that when recalling the story. As one of the things that you see, Yelena has like a certain, like, she knows how gross that was that Natasha did that. There's a reason she doesn't fully trust her because she knows that she killed a girl in order to get out and then didn't come back for her. And so this character that our default, we know Black Widow, we know what she's been up to. We know that she's trying to make amends, but we don't know the whole story. And Yelena doesn't know all the stuff we know, and she knows this other stuff about just how dark Natasha was, how evil of a thing she had to do to try and get out. So the widows show up, and Yelena and Natasha are on the run and make a run for it. And as I mentioned before, like just as they're like on motorcycles in these tight alleyways and running and stuff, feels like a chase right out of a Bourne movie. Just the locales, the way it's shot and everything. There's a lot of until like Taskmaster is like with a bow and arrow standing on top of a big vehicle. The other stuff feels a lot like a Bourne film. And so as they're on foot, we have this little part where one of the widows is tracking them down, gets injured. Natasha runs up to her like, hey, let me help you out. And we watch as Dreykov like pushes the terminate button, and this girl like points something to her head and says, I don't want to do this, and then kills herself. And just reminding us how horrific what they're doing actually is. So in this chase sequence, not much to comment on it. There's some nice little little jokes in there about Natasha having a little bit more of a conscience about stealing things, and a little joke about, do you want me to unsteal the car? And Taskmaster shows up, shoots an arrow, their car flips down and goes down into a subway. A little bit sensational type thing, that the odds that would happen seem pretty low, but whatever. So they go down through runway and they hide wherever Clint and Natasha hid before in their Budapest mission. They hid there for 2 years. And you just very quickly start to pick up on Yelena's sarcastic sense of humor. That what I appreciated about it is that like she sounds like one of my friends that makes those types of jokes. We all have a person that just has that sort of sense of humor and is just commenting on what's happening around them. Like, oh, it was a really great plan. My favorite part was where I almost bled out. Like, I know no shortage. Actually, I'm one of those people that would make that kind of joke in that moment. And you just kind of start to see the bond to it. And you also fleshes out a little bit that like we've wanted to know what happened with Hawkeye, Black Widow on this mission. And this fills in a lot of the details of how it went down, what it was about, and where that bond between the two of them was formed, with them in this small space for a couple of days together. So then we just get a couple more scenes between the two of them, building that relationship between them and fleshing out the details where it's revealed to us, the audience, that Natasha killed Dreykov's daughter. Clearly, Yelena, not crazy that she did this, and she sees Black Widow very differently than the world does. She sees an assassin killing people and getting praised for it, whereas the world sees her as a superhero that's saving the day. So then there's a couple great little moments. They found a way to like have what so what I mentioned this. I just said like Yelena's sense of humor, where she's feels like making observational jokes about things that normal humans would do. So we watch superhero movies and we just accept that the heroes do these poses and stuff like that. And then she calls it out and realizes just how silly the whole thing is, that like this assassin that every time she falls into the middle of a fight scene, she whips her hair, and Yelena starts making fun of her for it. And my theater, when I watched it last night, was mostly kind of dull on some of the humor. I don't know if it wasn't landing for the room as much as it was when I first watched it, but for the most part, they wasn't getting a lot of, some of the jokes weren't getting as big of reactions as I was expecting. Until this one, when she started making fun of Black Widow for posing, and she started like whipping her head, like, what is this? What is this? Like, looks, you always act like everyone is watching you. And that's the one time the theater really got a gigantic laugh out of it. And then, but Black Widow just like immediately like shuts it down and is like, well, you know, I was saving the world. And I think that's, as you watch this movie, one of the big things a lot of people are commenting on afterwards is that Yelena stole the show, David Harbour stole the show, and Black Widow felt like she was on the back burner of her own movie. She was outshadowed in her own movie. And I wonder how much of that is it, like, you know, clearly the plot is following her. Every scene is Natasha. Like almost 95% of the movie, it's following Natasha, and then the 5% is intercutting with the other, you know, main cast members. But she's front and center the whole time. But her inherent personality is not as lively as these new characters they added in. So then when you have a conversation and Yelena is like telling this funny joke at the expense of Black Widow, and then Black Widow's like, well, I was saving lives. We don't remember the I was saving lives when she tries to transition into something serious. We remember the funny person. And Yelena sort of like stole every scene, and then David Harbour shows up and he starts stealing every scene as well. Anyway, this leads to them having to sit down at dinner, talking about their lives and what they imagine them to be, and they don't know what they're going to do. And as much as we've been on a mission this whole time and the villains have shown up, a lot has happened, they haven't actually decided to go on the mission of the movie yet. So at the end of it, both of them they're two lost people. Both of them have lost the thing that was their life. Yelena, her whole life has been Red Room assassin, and finally she's free. Black Widow, the last 8, 9, I don't know exactly how long it's been since she converted over to S.H.I.E.L.D., but like she like doesn't have that anymore. She's just on the run, so, and she's realizing like, wait, I didn't know the Red Room was still there, and I should have done something. I should have saved Yelena. I should have saved all the others. I should have done that. I didn't. And now I have the anti-mind control formula. I need to do this. So then they decide, let's go and do this. Well, I don't know where the Red Room is. So this brings us to the breakout. So then we're introduced to old Alexei, Red Guardian, in prison. Obviously, we're introduced to him as the undercover spy version of him. We saw a little bit of him there. But his main version, as we see him in this film, we're introduced to him in prison, where he's arm wrestling everyone. Everyone's trying to beat him while he's getting a new tattoo and cracking jokes. And immediately you can see that this guy's a lot of fun, that he doesn't take too much too seriously, doesn't care too much about anyone else, a little bit of a very oblivious kind of person, and also very powerful. And he's telling all these stories about the glory days of him versus Captain America. And he's even like, someone's even said, like, what year did that happen? 1982, 1983, me and him. Like, he was my great rival. And the guy's like, he was still in the ice when that was happening, which Red Guardian did not hear this. You see him beats the guy in arm wrestling, and then there's just this little gesture where the guy lifts his arm, and you're like, that's not where your arm's supposed to bend. And he broke the guy's arm. Once again, like, talking about how this is a little bit darker, a little bit more mature, a little bit more brutal. Things like actual seeing a broken arm and just dangling there a little bit. You don't normally see that in these movies, but you just, like, this character just immediately has this liveliness to him. He gets a phone call, and with all the stuff that he's received, there's a toy, and you can tell this guy loves his past. He loved being this superhero guy, and he's the classic guy that's over the hill, past his prime, running to relive the glory days, having this very nostalgic view of it, and a very simplistic view of it as well, and gets his toy, and he's playing with it, pulling the string, and the head pops off. There's an earpiece. He puts it in, and over it, it's Black Widow saying, hey, it's your lucky day. Here's how you need to break out. Here, do this. And you just see him immediately come to life. Like, he doesn't even pause to think about it. He does not spend one moment, like, reflecting on, is this a good idea? He's not that guy at all. He's like, someone wants to get me out of here? I'm getting out of here. So he goes into this big, gigantic action sequence of him, like, smashing through the glass, knocking out the two guards, running through the hallways, and they're like, hey, keep it subtle. And this guy's not subtle. That's not his skill set. And so you see him run out as he's being tracked down by all these guards. And he's clearly super powerful, but he's not strategic. He's been in prison. He's not in prime shape for any of this. So he's, falling over a little bit, and Black Widow's like, oh, I got to go help him. And so then she jumps down. The first thing she does when she lands, she does the hair flip. We get the little, and as soon as it's one of those ones that they do have Yelena call it out, say like, oh, what a poser. But the simple fact that earlier in the movie, it was called out, it just primes your brain to, as soon as you see, you notice it and you remember it and you want to comment on it yourself as it's happening. So they start having this big, gigantic action sequence, and they're not doing the best job. This was not the best thought out plan. Clearly, Yelena doesn't seem to be the best helicopter pilot. So there's all sorts of little troubles happening, and there's machine guns shooting at the helicopter. Yelena decides to shoot a bazooka at it, blows up the tower, causes an avalanche, and there's this moment where it pauses for just a second where she realizes it's possible she's about to die in the middle of a prison break from shooting a bazooka causing an avalanche, and she just pauses and she goes, this would be a cool way to die. Its delivery is just perfect. I'm like, yeah, that would be a pretty cool way. That's a fun little moment right there. But she doesn't die because these are super spy peoples, and one of them has super soldier serum in their blood. So they end up being able to escape, and they get on the helicopter, and immediately you realize Alexi's interpretation of their lives and their past. He is unbelievably obtuse. Like, he doesn't get it. He just, like, we saw that opening scene where this father's like, you're strong. We've got a mission. We accomplished our mission here, and you're going to go accomplish your mission somewhere else. And then men grow up, stick needles in their necks. Like us, our stomachs sink. And we're like, oh no, oh my goodness, this guy's evil. And then as you see these scenes, you start to realize, like this guy is a legitimate, full-blown, true believer in the most simplistic of senses. He was a patriot for Russia and was trying to do his duty for the country. And he views these little girls, they did their duty for the country, and they're awesome at it. Like, he legitimately thinks in his head that they've shown up to save him, and they're going to have this great reunion, and he's so happy to see them, and he's so proud of them. And to even kind of get ahead, like, there's this great bit, a couple minutes after this where there's talking, and he's like, why are you guys so mad at me? Everything worked out. You guys have had great lives. Look at how this played out. My two girls are the two best women assassin in the world. Like, you're literally a superhero that saved the earth and the universe. You are the top child assassin in the world. I'm so proud of you. And then, like, the way that he's like grabs their hands in this sincere fatherly moment. I am so proud of you. Your ledgers must just be dripping in blood. And you understand this insane worldview of this guy that comes from a world of action, blood, soldier, mission for the country. And he can't even pause to realize, like, he's never had a moment of reflection beyond that. He just sees we're all on the same side, hanging in the direction, and all of us got screwed over by Dreykov eventually, but we did our parts and we're the best at what we do. That's his perception of his family. And then the wife in the situation, she's the smartest person. He's the great warrior. They're the two great assassins. What a wonderful family. And these two girls' perception, like, this guy was a part of, like, he was supposed to be our father, then he abandoned us to these people that brainwashed us and turned us into something that we didn't want to be. And to some extent, he doesn't even realize, like, he doesn't know they were brainwashed. He doesn't know all of what went down. So he just has this very bizarre, freaky perception of it. Back to our helicopter. It leads to some of the great lines in the movie. He's like, what's going on? Is it that time of the month? And that's, once again, his simple worldview. He doesn't realize what was done to them, or he never stopped to think about the implications of what was done to them. Like, he doesn't know any of this. And so Yelena, with her very sarcastic, simple sense of, like, let's call out the obvious observational sarcasm. It's like, you can't do that when you don't have your lady parts. And they starts doing these gestures. And you like, immediately he started like what? The guys who no need to be crass. A little bit about all this. And so basically they're like, hey, we want to go to the Red Room. He's like, I don't know where it is. Why don't we go see Melina? And they didn't know she was alive. They're like, wait, she's alive? Like, yeah, of course she's alive. Like, she still works for the Red Room. She's still doing her part. Like, still part of the mission. Like, I'm the muscle. She's the brain. She's still, what are you talking about? And you, like, had this moment where they realized, like, they didn't know what was going on with them. The parents didn't know what was going on with them. There's like this whole world of secrecy that you kind of knew was true about all of this, but they're realizing just how little they actually understood about what was going on with the other people. Every interaction between each of these people reveals a new layer to how much they didn't know about the other people. They didn't know what happened to them, and they didn't know what was going on in the past. And as they're having these conversations in the plane, Red Guardian is like, oh, Dreykov betrayed me. Like, he sent me on that stupid undercover mission where I was in America for 3 years. And you just see, like, Yelena's, like, heart broken, just ripped in half. The only family she's ever had, the only father she's ever known is this guy. And he thought it was this boring job that he had for 3 years. Like, shit, like, to her, this is my dad. To him, oh, this is this boring job I had. I wish I would have done anything else. And then I got sent to prison. And so Red Guardian, like, he's not he's not like the liberation fighter here. He's not near. He feels betrayed that he was thrown in prison, and he cares about these two girls in this weird way that he does. Like, he actually cares about them while at the same time not realizing that him saying, "Oh, this boring mission being your parent," he's so simplistic and kind of dumb that, or not kind of dumb, pretty dumb, that he doesn't realize how socially dumb, certainly doesn't realize how much this is going to hurt these two people while seemingly deeply caring about them. Like in the conversation, he goes like, "I am so proud of you. It touches me so deeply that you would come to rescue me. Oh, it was so boring living with you for 3 years." Like his brain doesn't see the disconnects. And that's what kind of makes him so much fun is I know I've had conversations like this with people. I know people like this that are just, they don't have super soldier serum and they're not Russian spies, but they know people that are this level like of obtuse that they can say such contradictory things that they can't see the disconnect and how what they're saying hurts the people around them. And even though we're watching this ridiculous superhero movie, there's a truth and humanity to it at the same time that rang true for me. At least I was reminded of a lot of people I know through these Russian assassins that are not realistic. They're not that I don't know. I don't know any Russian assassins, but I know people with those personalities. So anyway, they decide to go see Melina. And there's this little joke that they do where she goes, "No, this isn't going to get us to St. Petersburg." And Alexei goes, "Oh, we'll be fine." And then it does a cut to a shot of the helicopter just dropping to the ground. A bit of a cheap joke, but it certainly made me laugh all 3 times. It's like it's a really well set up joke. Tonally, doesn't really fit this movie. For the most part, I liked the humor in this film because it felt like it flew out of the personalities of these characters. And I don't mind if the characters are funny and they have big personalities. When you do a bit about a helicopter crash and it's like, whoop, we just ran out of gas. And you like literally do a cut to, it's straight out of a comedy. It's like the tactics of a comedy of like, you set up an expectation. I don't think we can make it. We'll be fine. Punchline. Helicopter falls down. Like it's the basic setup line for a joke. Most of the humor wasn't such obvious setup punchline as this was, but it did make me laugh. It was pretty funny. And so I already talked about the interactions they have about the ledgers dripping with blood. So they end up at Melina's house. So our family is reunited at this pig farm where essentially Melina lives by herself with pigs working on the mind control stuff. And once again, you see the different ways that everyone is reacting to this. They don't know exactly the girls don't know if they can trust her. Alexei is just excited to see his former wife because he's been in prison. And he's excited to see her. Let's leave it at that. So they're all responding differently. And his costume is still there at the house. And so he's like, oh, he wants to relive the glory days. So he puts his costume on. And Natasha, it kind of ultimately, a lot of her anger is towards this mother figure that didn't do anything, didn't inform them. And Alexei seems clueless about all this, but she doesn't seem nearly as clueless. She just didn't do anything about it. And all this leads to like this meal that they have that does a great job of like going from humor and a bunch of jokes about Alexei and him putting the costume on, and it's awfully tight because he's gained some weight since then, and then it drifts towards something else. But I'm going to pause on that real quick. I saw some comments, some people on Twitter being like, hey, if you didn't like the Fat Thor stuff, you're not going to like a bunch of the humor in Black Widow. A lot of the same vibes here. I don't think it's remotely the same thing. The humor of of putting Chris Hemsworth in a fat suit is not the same thing as David Harbour is an aging Captain America type character. That they're pretty like it's not the same thing because Thor as the big Thorbowski, you're taking a guy in his prime that we've seen him in his prime as this God of Thunder that's, you know, the most handsome man on the planet, jacked, and then he's acting like the Lebowski, like from the Big Lebowski, like he's just behaving like a different person. Whereas Lexi's acting consistent with himself, and he's a human. He's not a god from space. He is a human that just got older. He's been in prison. He's like still just as strong, but he seems to have always had a little bit of a goofy personality. I don't see the same thing at all. And like the idea of an aging man trying to squeeze into his old clothes, that's like a classic trope of comedy. So you go watch like anything about a guy trying to fit into his old tux, like that. I do this stuff. Like, can these jeans still fit? Like, that's what you do in middle age. You like try and fit into your clothes. You realize I haven't worn this in 10 years. Will it still fit? That's that's actual relatable stuff once you're over the age of 35, like, or or younger. Like, as soon as you start getting older, you have moments where that happens. So I don't see a connection there at all, because it's just a wildly different character, and that made much more sense in this context. Like, anyway, rabbit trail. Back at our dinner table, but it starts with humor of them kind of joking around, and as they go through it, it just slowly builds as things are revealed, and it's a great scene because it's amusing, because it's funny at times, but then it's also expositional, as Melina's like, yeah, we worked on mind control. Look at this pig come in here. And it's kind of terrifying for a little bit as she like has the pig fall over, and you're like sitting there like, are we about to watch a pig die because she turned off its breathing? And it like, it's a little, you get a couple chuckles for a moment, and then you're like, this is like, I'm holding my breath for the pig's sake. Like, what's going on here? And she, oh, yeah, it's fine. He had 11 seconds, turns it back on, and he gets back up. So it delivers exposition, and she says like, oh yeah, I mean, they trained some people. I don't really know who they were. And she says that, and you see, then it cuts to the reaction of Yelena, who's like, me over here. And then they start talking about the family, and Natasha's like, it was never real. We shouldn't talk about it. Well, it was never real. Cuts to Yelena's face of like, it was real for me. Like, you guys, this is great line. She's like, my whole childhood, the only family I've ever known was a lie, and nobody told me. And it's like this great line of the, like, what really went down in the betrayal she felt in this other sense of, legitimately, like, I thought I was an American. I thought that we were the Ohio family, and it was all a lie. Nobody told me that. And it's just an interesting little thought to put in there. And it kind of transitions through all these different emotions that they're having. So it's entertaining, exposition, and then like big emotions at the same time. So Yelena runs off to, because she's mad at all of them for not telling her the truth and everything they're saying and everything that's going on, like being brainwashed by her mother that didn't even pay attention to what was going on. And so he breaks it up to having a couple of these different parent-child conversations. And with Melina and Natasha, Melina's trying to figure out, like, how did you stay a good person? Like she said at the beginning, like, be sure to keep your heart. Like, don't lose your heart. Don't lose who you are. And so then she calls back to that. You're like, how did you do that? Like, how did you stay true to all of this? She's like, well, I learned from you. Like, I held true to everything that you taught me. And you have those moments, like, you start to realize that as weird and broken as this family was and as not real as it was, there was a legitimate truth to it. And even through all these conversations, like, Melina and Alexei believe they did the best that they could in this situation. They were on a mission, and they just raised these kids. And you have Natasha has this moment. She's like, why on earth did I, like, stay strong? Like, I guess it was this mother that I had. Like, wow, this, okay, I've been trying to repress it. I've been trying to hold it back. I've been trying to fight it off and not care about it. But there's actually something to it. There's actually a truth to this. It's kind of like interesting the way that worked, like, having those moments. That's where it's a movie that like has depth and intrigue in a way that's just new to the MCU, because it is so much about family in the weirdest sense imaginable. And we had the conversation, and then at the end of it, in this conversation, she ends with Millie saying, I'm sorry, I already contacted the Red Room. They're on their way. Leaves this dangling thread to mislead the audience a little bit in a good way. Back over into the other bedroom, Yelena doesn't want to have a conversation. Like, she's not at all looking to have a conversation with Alexei. And he really, really, really wants to be dad here and is trying his best in the weirdest way. But tells this bizarre anecdote about his dad peeing in his... My dad, he'd do toilet in my hands. Urine 35 degrees Celsius and warmed up my hands. She's like, what are you? And you see, like, as he says it, he's so eager and so honest and sincere in this moment of wanting to tell this story. And then he says that, like, the punchline to it is, he peed on my hands. And you can see on her face, like, oh, this is what you convinced me I needed to hear. And he goes, fathers. Just he's legitimately doing his best to have a sincere moment. And it's, my dad peed on my hands is what he gets to. And so that doesn't work. And so the thing he's able to do and realize is, like, I need to be the person that I was then. And so he just starts singing American Pie, her song from back in the day. Like, I need to like, I've said that I didn't care about her. I do care about her, but I've said things that makes her think that I don't. What do I do that actually not tell her about my dad, not tell stories about me? What's her favorite song? And you have that moment where it's like a very strange moment of a character arc, because it's just this guy that, for him, it's literally open your eyes, stop being clueless, think about other people, don't be selfish. And that's one of those moments, like, he's trying to be a father and trying to figure out how to do that, and he'd been doing it on his terms, finally realized I need to do it on her terms. So has this moment, and they start to bond a little bit. Red Room people show up, and we get another one of those kind of classic comedy bits where he gets shot with a dart and like, you think one dart, and then he gets hit with 8 darts. They did this exact joke 2 weeks ago in The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard with Ryan Reynolds. It's kind of a classic joke, so a bit of a cheap joke, but it's normally pretty effective. But once again, those are I think those are the 2 jokes in the movie that felt a little bit too much like classic setup. One dart can't take me. Bunch of darts hit him. Very tried and true classic joke that's been done many times before, but it works. So he gets passed out. Yelena starts walking through the house with her gun. We see Natasha on the ground, and then turn around, and Lena's there, has betrayed them, shoots her. She falls over. Taskmaster shows up. Ta-da! Melina's not Taskmaster. I thought she was until that moment. I was thinking she was. Even as we see Natasha on the ground, I was like, it's her. She's Taskmaster. And then Taskmaster walks up and I went, oh, okay, I was wrong about that. This brings us to the Red Room. On the way to the Red Room, we get this little shot of them in the ship, and Alexei wakes up and he sees Melina flying them there. And you feel the betrayal, like, Melina, like, you can feel like he can't believe that she's done this in light of the situation that they're in, that she would still choose to turn them over. Like, he feels betrayed in this moment because he thinks they're a family and the family's on this mission. And he's a man of action. He in certain ways, I guess, not even really the most principled, because suddenly he's for the family, not for Russia anymore. We're up to this for so long and been like, hey, we were awesome. We worked for the country. We did the mission. What's the problem? And you can see now he cares about the family more. Anyway, we get there, and Yelena is strapped to a table. Alexei, Black Widow are in cages, and Melina is up with Dreykov, and they start talking about what they've been up to and everything. And very quickly it's revealed, ta-da! It was all part of the plan. It's actually Natasha is with Dreykov. And so she spends a huge chunk of our third act of our movie having conversations with Dreykov in this office. And then he's like, we got to figure out what went wrong with Yelena, so we're going to cut her brain out. Cut to Yelena on the table, and she's like, this would be a much less cool way to die. Nice payoff to the joke earlier on. But of course, she's like, I know people that talk to themselves like this. Like, I keep saying this. I talk to myself like that, make little jokes out loud that I think things that I find are amusing to say. And so she does a lot of that stuff where she's joking for the audience and for herself. But so she's on the table about to have her brain cut out, and then as this other joke where Alexei, who's thinking maybe we're about to die, we've been kidnapped, thinking he's talking to Natasha, gives her this big speech about how he's sorry and he's realized how far off he was and that he truly does care. Like, I hear you, I am changed, and I was wrong in what I did. And so it's like, what's fun about the character is that everything he says is so sincere that it doesn't feel like anything's particularly masked. Whatever he's thinking is what he's saying. It's pretty on the right there. He's as simple as it seems. Whatever he's like, well, we were for the country and we were successful. Why would that be a bad thing? And you realize, oh, well, my daughters, I didn't protect them. They didn't want to do that. Horrible things were done to them. This wasn't so great. And then now he legitimately cares about them and gives this sincere speech, only to discover the door opens and he's like, wait, how did you open the door? Mask comes off, and in fact, he's with Melina, who designed the cages, so she knows how to escape. So a bunch of stuff kind of goes down in the Dreykov meeting where it's revealed that Taskmaster, like, Natasha is known for her mind great games in these interactions. She's always been the person that, in Avengers, she's talking with Loki and she's trying to trick Loki into revealing things, and he kind of does, and he reveals it as she kind of gets upset, but she turned out she wasn't upset. She's just messing with Loki. And she does that with him. Like, she's trying to like get under his skin and get him emotional. And so she's like, you know, did it bother you? Did you feel anything when I killed your daughter? And Dreykov, who is the one that trained her on how to do this. You have, like, remember, he's the guy that trained her to do this. He's the master manipulator of all people and things like this. He's like, oh, you think you're going to get under my skin saying stuff like that? What you did to my daughter gave me my best toy yet, and it's revealed Taskmaster, mask comes off, it's his daughter. And, I mean, by this point in time, you've kind of forgotten about Taskmaster a little bit. At the beginning of the movie, it seemed like Taskmaster's going to be this great villain. From the trailer, it seems like Taskmaster, this is going to be a very cool villain. You watch the movie, Taskmaster, this is kind of a fun henchman with a backstory. Like this character, they're like posters, trailers, who's this person that can learn their skills with a mystery of it all. And you watch the movie and Taskmaster is like not a big deal at all in this movie. Like, you don't care much about Taskmaster, just a couple fun action sequences. But at the end of the day, a henchman with no motive. Just because he's a henchman. That's the idea of a henchman. Like, they're just doing it because it's their job. In this case, doing a job that they're required to do. It's disturbing. It reveals how evil Dreykov is. It does all that. But Taskmaster, as a character itself, just literally is essentially a human robot, a biological robot. Pretty underwhelming. Not all that interesting in a lot of senses, especially for a character that is a lot more interesting elsewhere. There's a lot more you can do with this character if it's not, yeah, I reprogram my daughter. She has no motivation whatsoever. She just does what I tell her to do. She has to. Okay. So she's the same as all the other widows with the gimmick of full face mask and can learn other people's skills fighting skills immediately. So just a better version of the widows. Okay. So same as all the, okay. That's underwhelming. So he sends Dreykov sends off Taskmaster to go battle Red Guardian. And then in the meeting, once Taskmaster leaves, Black Widow tries to stab him. She can't, tries to shoot him. She can't. And you realize that she's kind of, the pheromone deal's going on to where she's not fully in control of what's happening. So Taskmaster and Red Guardian fight. I wish we'd gotten more of this. I wish that Red Guardian, it's like they set up this Russian Captain America, this is aging hero. And he does get to do action in the movie, but so he does the breakout sequence. And then we have this fight right here, but we don't get nearly enough from this guy as we probably should. Like, we should, like, this is a guy that should have some moment where he really gets to be the hero, really gets to do something where he makes a difference. But for the most part, like, he's just a fun character on screen. As Red Guardian, they don't really do much with him. I don't know why you wouldn't give him a little bit more to do, or make this fight with Taskmaster more interesting, because it's like he fights and he's losing, but he's not really getting hurt so much, but he's definitely not doing great against this person that is able to adapt and everything like that. And then after a relatively small amount of screen time with the two of them fighting, he's in the middle of it. He's kind of losing a little bit. Lena runs up, does a full one of these Black Widow spinny thingies, throws Taskmaster into a room, closes the door. I would have liked Red Guardian to get to do more. I would have liked to let him have his heroic moment. Let him do something that's cooler than not dying in a fight. There's more to do there. So anyway, Dreykov reveals everything that he's been up to. He's like, we've got all these people, and she's just been toying with him, trying to get him to reveal stuff. So eventually I've got this computer that does everything and uses his ring. She realizes, it's the ring is the key, and there's a little pattern that you do on the little pad, and if you do that pad, you can open it up. Okay, so now she has learned everything she needs to learn, and starts trying to antagonize him by trying to emasculate him with all, like, everything. So he starts punching her in the face. And once again, talking about brutality, he like runs up and he punches her in the face. The lady next to me goes, "Oh!" and just screams a cuss word as when it happens. And every time he punched her, it plays it as rough as possible. And you start to realize, like, how in movies, like, you see people get punched all the time, but like when you see like a man punching a woman that can't defend herself, there's something about that that's just gross to see. Like you just gut stomach want to see someone that's powerful punching someone that can't defend themselves. It, like, in your stomach, you feel it. It's gross. Like, her nose starts bleeding, everything. And she's like saying all this stuff like, you think I can't take a punch? It's like, I'm an Avenger. Like, I've been taking punches my whole life. Like, what are you talking about? This is the best she could do. So he punches her a bunch of times, reveals all of his stuff. And she goes, thank you for your compliance. And just like she did in the Loki interrogation in Avengers, she's like, this was all one of her many different tactics to get this guy to reveal everything, to get under his skin. Harassing him about his daughter didn't really work, didn't get, it revealed something important, but didn't reveal this. And so then she keeps doing this until he reveals everything he can. She goes, thank you. And then it lets us know through flashback that there's like a nerve she needs to sever. So she smashes her face on the desk. Once again, the girl next to me just goes, oh, it just screams a cuss word as it happens. And you see her nose crooked and blood gushing out of it. And I don't think it's that easy to sever a nerve. And if you do sever a nerve in your neck, I think that has some pretty significant consequences moving forward for your life. But so she severs the nerve. And so she just beats the crap out of this guy as he calls in his widows to take her out. Meanwhile, Yelena's been making a run for it throughout the building, gets some great moments. Like she drops out of the ceiling, goes to the pose, whips her hair back, and she goes, ooh, that's gross. And then she goes straight into like beating a guy up with like this cool move that she does. And just like everything she does, you go, I want to see more of this character. Like, she's great. Clearly, I mean, shocked beyond anything if we don't see a whole lot of more of her in the future. Clearly, they wanted to make you love this character and can't wait to see more of her. That's pretty obvious what was happening here, and it worked. But she beats a bunch of people up. She gets to the formula stuff, and then Black Widows show up to battle Black Widow. And, you know, she holds her own well enough, but she's battling like 20 people with all the training she has. So she gets the crap kicked out of her. And then Yelena runs in with a deprogramming bomb, blows up, rains down on all of them. And their minds are freed. And they're like, what do we do now? Like, just get out of here, survive. So all you got to do is run. And also, meanwhile, with all of this, Melina blew up the engines. She was supposed to like gently land it. Dreykov stopped that, so she just blew up one of the engines, so they're crashing. So this leads to kind of the final little section here where the ship is crashing down. And this is where I think they go too spectacle. Like, I don't think that we needed. This feels like a video game to me. When you start doing stuff like this, where it's so detached from reality and like they're crashing for 10 minutes and then people start jumping out and they're like falling through the sky, landing on debris, fighting on debris, grabbing a parachute and then falling again. And like, it just kind of goes into, these are the sorts of things that work well in a video game. When you watch it in a movie, it's just too detached from anything real. So you know you're watching excessive special effects and things like that. It just pulls you out of it. Like, there's no way they did anything, any of this remotely practical. So I know that I'm not watching something real. And this type of spectacle, and I don't think the scope and size of this sort of like debris falling fits even the movie. Like, it makes sense that there's be like this sky base. Okay, that makes sense. Why can no one find it? Okay, it's in the sky. Cool. And that lines up also with a bunch of stuff with S.H.I.E.L.D. They had their own helicarrier. But as it plays out as an action sequence, it's just like a little bit too much, too big for the type of story that they were telling. But a couple other things happen up there where Natasha frees Taskmaster. It's like, I don't care if you kill me or not, but I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm going to give you a chance to live. So she frees her, and explosions happen. Like I said, video game type stuff. Like, splits in half. Neither one of them get killed by the explosion, but explosion takes place. She falls out the window, grabs onto the thing, dangling 10,000, 20,000 feet in the sky, and swings by a bar. Like, video game stuff. Like, way too crazy stuff happening. Considering it's a story about family. Like, you just don't need this type of spectacle. So they end up getting to a moment in time where Yelena does like her own little sacrifice deal where she's like, it was fun. And then she tries to blow up the ship that Dreykov is on, or she does blow it up, and she gets thrown through the air. She's falling through the sky. Video game sequence. Black Widow jumps down and flies after her through debris. Taskmaster flies down through the debris after her. I'd much rather just see more of Red Guardian Taskmaster doing actual fighting stuff, and Taskmaster learning his fighting skills, his wrestling skills and stuff that he's using, and while using Avengers fight styles and stuff. I'd much rather see more of that and then have Black Widow join in than fall through the sky stuff. So they're following. Natasha's able to give Yelena a parachute, and Taskmaster and Natasha share a parachute. They get on the ground. They fight for 10 seconds, and Natasha's able to push the button on her arm to get the helmet to come off. Sprays red stuff in her face, and she's woken up. And like I said, they're either having more Natasha, Yelena, like have Natasha, Yelena battle her together, like something. There's more to do with Taskmaster. Like even as you get into the final fight with her, there wasn't as much final fight with her as you'd expect. There's significantly less Taskmaster final fight than would really makes any sense for the nature of the character, and it is really short. So anyway, she gets defeated and freed. She's laying there on the ground, and then the Black Widows show up. The family kind of has a reunion moment. Alexei realizes that, he doesn't even need to say a speech. It's just, I just mess it up. Clearly they care about each other, give each other hugs. The family heads off with the widows, and they take Taskmaster with them. They're going to go and try and free all of the programmed people throughout the world, and they're going to synthesize the formula and everything. They're off to do their adventure. And then you see Natasha kind of standing there waiting for Thunderbolt to show up, bookending the beginning of the movie. Thunderbolt's really not. I mean, he's barely in this movie, and almost wish, I don't know why they even put him in the trailer if he's in this little of it, because it makes you think there's more of it, and there's as much of him in the trailer as there's in the movie. Then it cuts to 2 weeks later. She's got her Infinity War hair, and she's there with her buddy who she's put in the friend zone, and they chat just a little bit, and he's gotten them a good ship, and she's like, I'm going to go free my friends. And I guess you realize what this means is that the prison break at the end of Civil War, time passes in there, which means that Black Panther and Black Widow both take place between the next to last sequence in Civil War and that final little bit with the prison break, because apparently she was on this prison break with Captain America that takes place. But anyway, I guess that doesn't matter. But she goes off with her blonde hair that doesn't look great, and the credits roll. I don't like her blonde hair in Infinity War. That is my least favorite of her hairstyles. This brings us to our post-credit scene. Clearly, it's years later. Yelena pulls up. She has a dog. She said she wanted to get a dog earlier. The dog's name is Fanny, which is one of the names on the fake IDs that Natasha was given earlier in the film. She walks up to this little obscure grave in the middle of nowhere under a tree. And it's Natasha's grave, clearly post-Endgame. And she's kind of moving things around. You have a nice little moment. You realize that, whatever she's been up to all these years. And still cares about her and visiting the grave. And as she's there, Valentina shows up. So this first little bit, I liked it. Like, you wanted to see what is Yelena's response to Natasha's death. So we get that. Second half of this, not so crazy about it. So Valentina shows up. This was supposed to be her first appearance, because this was supposed to be the first thing in Phase 4. Way the universe played out, we got 3 of the TV shows first. So Valentina actually showed up first in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But this character that was introduced that is putting some sort of team together is there, and she's talking to her and, saying all of this, empty sympathy for Natasha and what happened. But basically trying to recruit Yelena for some mission. It's clearly implied that Yelena's been working for her for a while now. And she goes, I'm going to give you your next mission. I need you to go after the person truly responsible for her death. Hands her this notebook. She opens it up. Hawkeye's on the inside. And so I'm guessing this is the setup for the Hawkeye series, is somehow whatever's going down is that involves that Yelena's going to show up on the Hawkeye show trying to kill him at the beginning. And then it's going to be pretty easy to sort that one out, because there's no reason to think that Clint would be out to get her. So unless she's been dramatically lied to, she'd be able to piece together Clint's not a bad guy after all. And why would Yelena fall for stupid lies? Given her life, she should be pretty good at figuring out who's lying to her. And Valentina seems like the least insincere person in the entire MCU. So I guess maybe Loki is more of a trickster and liar. But so, it's pretty easy, Clint, to just say, we were on an island and one of us had to sacrifice ourselves to get the stone, and we literally fought. We literally had a full-blown fight, and of course I would in a second die to get that stone. I would die if there was a chance to bring my family back. But her whole point was that I should live because I had a family to get back, that like children and everything. And that's what was important. Like, you just have that conversation and there's no reason that Yelena would be like, hold bitterness over this. Like, there's just not an argument there. So it seemed like a really weird final reveal for, you get one post-credits and you have a movie that's set 5 years behind where the MCU is at, or I guess kind of even more than that, kind of 8 years behind where the MCU is at. And the one piece we get that's like, where are we going? Where are we going with this? Is someone giving us information that the audience immediately goes, no, he's not. Clint's not responsible. That's not real. Like, it doesn't resonate in any sort of meaningful way because immediately our brains go, yeah, one conversation resolves that. And I don't think Yelena's stupid enough to even fall for this. Like, what's going on with it? Where are you going with this? Like, this rings very empty, very hollow. So I didn't like the post-credit scene very much. The first half of it, I was like, all right, yeah, that's a nice little touch. Our tease of where things are headed, not so much. It was very underwhelming, especially because we've now had 2 complete shows and now this movie and 5/6 of another show. And so you want something that gives us a good idea where all of this is headed. Like, what is Phase 4? Like, we know multiverse, but what is it? What's the threat? And so, okay, I know in some sense multiverse, and then we know she's putting together her team of misfit Avengers, whatever that's going to be. But just kind of wanted more. And to get my final thoughts on the movie, kind of tie it all together, I think this scene almost, and in certain ways, kind of exemplifies that, in that our one thing giving us the future, what's happening, just feels like such a minor tease, minor moment. The whole way all this movie does for like, what's the future of the MCU, is be like, there's some team being put together, but there's this plot after Hawkeye 2. And the movie feels inconsequential in a certain sense because it's so late. And being the kickoff movie of Phase 4, you want it to be a little bit, to be more meaningful. You want it to tease more, give us more, let us have an idea of where everything's headed. And instead, you get an adventure that I really enjoyed. Here as I went through this, there's a couple things in there that I picked on, but mostly I was like talking about how much I enjoyed it. And even as I was talking about it, I was like, yeah, like I really enjoyed so many elements of the characters and everything, the humor and everything, and the fight choreography when it happened, when it was hand to hand. But you just wish there was more. You wish there was more for the MCU as a whole. More teases, more set, something that gives us an idea, because we just kind of come to expect that. And sometimes our expectations can be our worst enemy. And I think that's kind of what happened with this movie in a certain sense of, it was supposed to come out a year ago. Like by now we were supposed to be getting some of these other more flashy things for Phase 4. And, I think they wanted to pause a little bit after 2019 and have kind of a little bit of a, like, let's reset, let's go smaller. But when you have to wait 2 years, you get that anticipation building. You're like, no, what's happening with Phase 4? Like, I really want to know. I mean, Endgame came out over 2 years ago. What's happening? And all you get is like, she's going after Hawkeye. That's what you get. That doesn't satisfy your want for what's happening. What's happening? I want some answers. Anyway, hopefully we'll get some answers on Loki finale coming in just a few days. I really enjoyed the movie. Like I said, I've seen it 3 times, and every single time I've been like, yeah. It's a very solid MC movie, very entertaining MC movie. Weird timing. Couple jokes felt a bit forced. I wish Taskmaster was had more to it. Man, I really enjoyed this movie. That's my take on it. Let me know what you thought. Spoil away. Say all the fun stuff that you want down below in the comments section. And I got some MCU rankings coming in the near future. I got some Loki rankings coming in the near future. And keep talking movies and TV too much.